When I was a child, I had exposure to a lot of photography books that really exemplified the lives of people around the world. And so I started reading those books when I was probably about 6 years old. So my parents, who were very intuitive in really trying to identify their children's giftings and interests, they saw that I had this deep passion where I would read these photography books for hours every day, just looking at the pictures, reading where they're from, and trying to really gauge the lifestyles that they had. It started to make me question, how are children my age living in and experiencing their worlds? I started learning that some children were only eating one meal a day. Some children were not allowed to go to school because they needed to help their parents work in the fields and in their different jobs. And so then it started the question at a young age of, why are those children not able to have an education, but I'm able to have an education? Why are those children only eating rice one time a day and I'm able to have a table full of food? And that was the first moment that I started to understand what is injustice and what is fairness and what does it mean to be born in a certain country and receive certain things like myself that others were not receiving. And at about 15, I really viewed trafficking as being the number one atrocity in the world because it combined all of these other challenges, like when we look at mass migration, when we look at lack of education, when we look at poverty, when we look at disenfranchised groups, indigenous groups. The meeting point of the similarity is that all of them are at heavy risk of being trafficked. Not for anything that they did, but because of the vulnerabilities that they may have been born into. And that felt so wrong to me. And then it was at that point that I said, I want to dedicate my life to serving the most vulnerable people around the world, the people that are unseen by others, the people that might not have a voice in places in the world. And I want to give my life as a sacrifice to be able to serve those people, serve the unseen, and really for my life to be an act of worship through serving. So I recognized that in order for me to accomplish this deep longing of my heart to be able to serve the unseen in a way that actually serves them and empowers them, I needed to be able to be educated at the levels of which that would really empower me to be able to walk alongside them as individuals. I worked so hard from the moment that I stepped on a university campus to be able to cultivate not only my experience and talent and skill in the realms of working internationally and what that means to be culturally competent, but to also understand the linkages between what are those root systems, what are those push-pull factors that push people into things like human trafficking, like poverty, like broken relationships. And that was really my heart. So for many years, I focused fully on the educational space and fully on collecting research internationally and working internationally to be able to start honing in and sharpening that talent and passion that I had. That deep longing of my heart was always in the realms of working with those that had been trafficked. I graduated from my master's and I was living in Costa Rica at the time, doing microloan development for female entrepreneurs living in poverty. And I got a call from a colleague and she said, there is a position open. It's to be the CEO of an anti-trafficking organization and the founder has been looking for a CEO for 2 years but hasn't found anyone. You should apply. And I told her I am completely inadequate for that job. I didn't feel like I was the one. So I went home and I spent a lot of time in prayer. And in that time in prayer, when I came to the Lord and said, I am so completely inadequate for this, I felt the Lord's voice say, I will be the one to train you. I didn't know what that meant, and I quickly learned. So I said yes. I said yes to the position. I said yes to leading an organization. I was 24 at the time. And within 3 months of me having this position, my first trip was to go to, because our primary locations in the organization were in Nepal and India. In India, they have an area, it's on a place called GB Road, that is 30 blocks of brothels. These 30 blocks of brothels on GB Road were some of the most depraved and vile brothels within all of India. So when I was walking the red light district, I saw a woman waving her scarf outside the brothel window. And her and I made eye contact, and I thought, that could have been me. And the way she looked at me said, that could have been me walking on the street. And I felt so wrong for being the one walking on the street. And that was the moment that reinforced for everything for me that these are my sisters, and there is nothing that she has done to create her being in this trafficking situation. It is only because of the structural and relational vulnerabilities that she has been born into that pushed her into living in a brothel. And I thought, I want to do everything in my power to help women like her not be trafficked and live in brothels like that, or the ones that are in brothels, for them to be free. Everything in my whole body cried out in passion to find a way to change this for women like her. I believe silence is God's first language. And so after 8 years of being the CEO in an anti-trafficking organization, I realized I needed some time away. And so I took a sabbatical and went to the desert. I wanted pure solitude and like full separateness and silence. And I feel like the desert is the most quiet place in the world. So I picked that intentionally to have silence, real silence. When I was in the desert, through prayer and meditation, God spoke to me and said, I need you somewhere else in leadership. And that was really hard for me because at that point, I had dedicated my whole heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears to this other organization, to my work in the anti-trafficking space. But I also, as my mission, like I talked about when I was a child, is that I want my life to be an act of worship, an act of being a vessel for the work that God wants to do. And so I, at that point, I started looking for the other space that God needed me in leadership. When I was building out the prevention curriculum, I started asking the survivors that I'd worked with, what could have been one thing that could have happened that would have prevented you from falling into the trap of trafficking? And every single survivor said, if I would have had one safe person, a community to come around me, people that would have asked me how I am, and really express that sense of belonging within a space or to a person, that would have curbed the entire trajectory of their lives of trafficking. And that is what made me really passionate then about the power of community and the power of belonging and the power of really engaging communities. We are able to focus in one aspect like disability care. In turn, the results of that is actually helping to prevent trafficking. Everything is tied together within these communities. And so when we're able to address one area or 2 areas or 5 areas within a community, that alone is helping lift up the entire community and empower them. And of course, that relates to the realms of trafficking. So I'm asking you, please give now. Please provide your generosity by blessing others whose lives will be transformed by your gift. I am asking you to give now so that we can see more communities experience abundant life and what it means to flourish and step into their God-given dignity.